Hello.
I am Joshua Gardner, and I'm here with Mr. Andrew Schatz, who was a Holocaust survivor and in literature. Could you tell us where you are from and how you became a Holocaust subject?
Well, I was born and raised in a little country called the Netherlands, and I was 9 years old when the war started and the Germans invaded our country. Holland was a neutral country, so we didn't have much of a military, and my family, we didn't practice any religion at all, but we soon found out that because of my heritage was Jewish, so we were rated as full-blooded Jews, except my mom, and we were forced to wear the yellow star, and then they started rounding up the first one in our family to be taken to the concentration camps was my oldest brother. He went to Auschwitz, and then my dad was taken, and one of my sisters. My dad went to Bergen-Belsen. So that's when my sister and I decided to go into hiding.
What were the effects on you?
Well, like I said, I was 9 years old, and my youth was just about taken away from me because we were fortunate to be in the Netherlands, because in some of the other countries the population turned against the Jews, but in Holland they actually they embraced us. I know we had a class bully in school, and he wanted to know where he could get one of those stars. I'm sure he'll learn soon that that's not what he wanted, because it prohibited us from going into theaters, swimming pools, ballparks, any parks at all, and even stores. So it was tough on a 9-year-old boy.
Where did you hide?
My sister and I went to the northern part of Holland, in a province called Friesland, which is the dairy capital of the world. And there we hid out just in the fields. We just, during the day, we would, in the fields, the workers, they had no automobiles, no trucks or anything. They'd go out and in the fields with horse and wagons, and we'd go out there with them, and we'd just sit by the wagon, and if we saw a patrol car coming by, any car, we knew it was the Germans, then we acted like we were putting things in the wagon or out of the wagon. And at night, we'd find a place to sleep in a barn. And we were in hiding for 2 years.
How and when did you get caught?
Well, we got caught because we got a little reckless one night. It was raining, and we found a barn, and we went upstairs where they normally had hay and straw where we could sleep on, and we didn't pay much attention. And the following morning I woke up to the sound of trucks, and I jumped up, and when I got to an exit and I looked down, and it was German trucks coming at us. And then I found out that there were about 16 other Jews sleeping in that attic, and they'd been there for 3 weeks, and you just couldn't do that. We would never spend the same place 2 days in a row. We just kept moving. But we were caught, and that was the end of our freedom.
Were you separated from your sister?
Yes, we were separated immediately, and she ended up in a camp called Dachau, and I was sent to a place called Papenburg, which was a combination of 3 camps, and they were slave labor camps. And I was sent there, and the main place that they had the prisoners work is at the shipbuilding. There's a huge shipbuilding place at Papenburg, and they also had 2 truck companies where they made army trucks. But because of my age, they never had me work in either one of those places. My work consisted of cleanup and some field works around the camp.
What was life like in the camps?
Well, in our camp, most camps had disease, and in our camp, most of the death was basically from starvation. We didn't get anything to eat in the morning, and for lunch we usually had a slice of dark whole wheat bread with lard on it, and at dinner time they gave us a bowl of what they call potato soup, which was actually the water that was. They had a kitchen there for the guards, not for the prisoners. And when they boiled the potatoes in these huge kettles, when they poured the water off, that became our soup.
When were you liberated? When were you liberated?
Well, I was in the camp for a little over a year, and that's one of the main reasons I survived, because when I got there, there were 60-some guys in the barracks that I was in, and when we were liberated, there were only 5 of us, the originals, left. We had some others come in, but most of the guys died of starvation. And another thing is, if they got sick, they sent them down the road to Bergen-Belsen, which was close by. I don't think I would have lasted another 5 or 6 months, because when they liberated us, they took us 1 truckload at a time to town where they had taken a school and set up a clinic. And I couldn't understand anything. The guys that liberated us, I had no idea who they were until they gave us a little cup of tea. And there was only one army that took tea at the battle, so we were liberated by the British. And when I went into town, one of the nurses that examined me was from Holland, so I could finally speak to somebody in my native tongue. And she weighed me and checked my blood pressure, and I weighed 79 pounds when I was liberated. And so I was kind of skinny, and I was in that place for about 10 days, and then they took me to Holland, where I was reunited with my mom. And then about 10 days later, my sister came home from Dachau. She was brought home in an ambulance. She was not in very good shape, but she's still alive. She's 94 years old and still trying to tell me what to do. And we're the only ones that survived.
When did you come to America?
I came to the United States in 1950 when we got back, and after a while, no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't find any news on any of our others. So after a while, 6-7 months, Mom got us together, and she said that evidently nobody else is coming back, and she decided that we should migrate somewhere else and start a new life. And we put in for Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United States. And the first one to invite us was New Zealand, but before we signed the papers and the visa came through for the United States. So we had to go through the procedure of immigration, getting shots and all that. And so I landed in Hoboken, New Jersey on the 13th of February, 1950. And then not long after that, I was drafted in the Army. I still didn't speak much English, but I spent 25 years in the military. I kind of, you know, 3 meals a day and clothing and a place to sleep. And so, and after I retired, I went into business with my son and in the construction business. And then I went on a speaking circuit for the Jewish Federation. And I traveled quite a bit and lectured. And in the schools here, I did as many as 60 lectures a month, but I won't go out of town anymore. I quit doing that about 3 years ago. But for a while there, I was going to El Paso and Yuma every year, and some other places. But I pretty well stay at home now. And now with the CDs out, they did a movie called Why We Remember. That movie is now in all the schools and all the public libraries here in Tucson, and that's based on my life story. And then, of course, there is the full-length movie that Steven Spielberg made, but that will not be released until after I die.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just to add to what you're saying. There must have been a lot of fear and a lot of hopelessness.
Absolutely.
And can you describe that if you'd like to, that kind of thing? And was it different between the older people and the younger people? Did you see people give up? What was that like?
Some people were real strong, but nevertheless, you know, we knew nothing what was going on. You know, as far as we knew, this was going to last forever, and we knew that, you know, none of us would survive if it did. And so, yeah, I read some of the stories that people wrote about, you know, organizations within the camp and stuff like that. It just wasn't there. I found out after the war that in the camp I was in, there was a Masonic organization of 5 guys from France. They met in a shed where I did some work, and that was quite a story. But as a whole, yeah, you were just numb. You know, you couldn't do anything about it. People said, well, why didn't you try to escape? You're in Germany, you know. I know we had one guy escape from a work detail, and one of the farmers brought him back in a wheelbarrow with a pitchfork stuck in his chest. So that was a no-brainer. You couldn't get away from it. And I had even more trouble because I was the only kid in the barracks, and the older guys, they didn't want nothing to do with me because they knew if the guards, no matter what they would do to me, there was nothing they could do about it. And so they just as soon not, you know, get real close.
Wow. Do you think it was the work that they gave you that helped you get through it, kind of get your mind off things, or what kind of work did they have you do?
Well, I worked in the field some. Actually, most of the work I did was in the field, you know, like plucking weeds from between potato plants and other types of things, and but also, you know, cleaning up the dining room that they have for the guards. And they talk about in the camps that some of the guards were actually helping the prisoners. I didn't see that. And other people I've talked to, you know, that were in other camps, that just weren't happy, because most of the guards that we had were veterans of the Eastern Front. They had been in Russia. They were wounded, and like our camp commandant, he had part of a leg and part of his arm missing, and that made him angry. And that was the same with a lot of guards. They'd like to play games. The commandant, he wore one of those little daggers, and he'd like to carve from people with that dagger. And it wasn't. If people tell you about some of the good things that happen in a camp, I don't know of any. And the people I've met through my involvement in the lectures that were in other camps, they didn't see it either.
So for the Germans, this was revenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when I got in the Army, they were going to send me to Germany. And I thought I was going to go nuts. And I talked to my commander, and he sent me to a psychologist, and she helped me a lot. After talking to me, she took me to the regimental commander, and she says, "Sir, I don't think it'd be a wise thing to send this man to Germany with a loaded rifle." So I didn't go to Germany. But she helped me a lot. You know, I was angry, and she told me, she said, "Don't let that idiot dictate how you're going to live the rest of your life." He said, "If you're going to go around the rest of your life hating people, he's one." And that stuck with me. And so I married a girl here. I've got 3 sons. I've got 5 grandkids. I've got 11 great-grandkids. So I'm retired from the military. I'm doing pretty good.
Do you think over time that you've healed?
Oh, yeah, I have, yeah. In 1983, my wife and I took a trip to Europe, and I wanted to go to Germany. I wanted to see, you know, how I would do among the Germans. And I had no problem whatsoever. So I came through it okay.
That's phenomenal. That is awesome. You have anything else? I think you got plenty. You have anything else?
People always ask about that, you know.
Everybody asked me about a tattoo. The number system for identification was only done in one camp, and that was at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And I didn't go there at all. I went to straight to Papenburg. One thing I should have told you about, in Amsterdam, they kicked us out of the schools. What they did, they took one school, one little school, and that's where all the Jewish kids went. We called it the Jew school, and that's where I met Anne Frank. Most people know the story of Anne Frank, and I went to school with her.
That's phenomenal. Wow.